Can engineers save Bigfoot? As military departments work to enhance actions protecting the environment and save endangered species of plants and animals from extinction, the Corps of Engineers may prove to be the salvation of Bigfoot. Bigfoot, also known by the Indian name Sasquatch, is purported to be an 8-foot-tall, 900-pound humanoid that roams the forests and wilderness areas of the Pacific Northwest and the Northern Rockies. Though most federal government agencies scoff at the existence of Bigfoot, the Corps lists the creature as one of the native species for the state of Washington in its environmental atlas. So many people have been stalking Bigfoot with high-powered rifles and cameras that Skamania County, Washington, is prepared to impose a $10,000 fine and a 5-year jail term on anyone who kills Bigfoot. The question arises, what if Sasquatch, after he is discovered, is hunted to the point of extinction? This has happened to a number of species of animals, birds, and fish.
Under U.S. law, the Secretary of Interior is empowered to list as endangered a species so threatened. Normally we know a great deal about species before we list them. A spokesman for the Fish and Wildlife Service says, "Many questions must be answered," he says, such as how big is the population? Does it occur anywhere else? Is the population in danger of decline?
One of the first steps in placing an animal on the endangered species list is to recognize the fact that it exists. The only federal agency to do so to date is the Corps of Engineers. The Fish and Wildlife Service has received requests to place Sasquatch on the endangered species list. It refused, adding, "No requests have been received for the protection of the 7-foot dentist of Oklahoma or the skunk ape of the Everglades, or the infamous Mothman in West Virginia." But despite such negative, skeptical opinions, the Corps Atlas states under its Bigfoot listing, plaster casts have been made in tracks showing a length and 5 to 10 inches in breadth, reported to feed on vegetation and some meat. Sasquatch is covered with long hair except for the face and hands, and has a distinctly human-like form. Sasquatch hair samples inspected by laboratories resulted in the conclusion that no such hair exists from any human or presently known animal. FBI unveils documents from 1970s Bigfoot investigation. In a surprising revelation, the FBI has released 22 documents shedding light on a 1970s investigation into the possible existence of Bigfoot. The probe, initiated in response to a request from Oregon-based Bigfoot hunter Peter Byrne, highlights a unique moment where federal investigators engaged with the mysterious legend. The investigation began in 1976 when Byrne, director of the Bigfoot Information Center and Exhibition, contacted the FBI with a serious inquiry. In a letter dated August 26, 1976, he asked the agency to clarify whether it had previously examined hair potentially belonging to Bigfoot, seeking to set the record straight on the matter. Convinced by Byrne's persistence, the FBI agreed to analyze 15 unidentified hair and tissue samples submitted for scientific inquiry. The results, detailed in a December 1976 letter from Assistant FBI Director Jay Cochran, concluded that the samples belonged to an animal of the deer family, effectively closing the case by February 1977. Now 93, Byrne remains undeterred, telling CNBC he still believes in Bigfoot's reality, though his pursuit has shifted to a hobby. The release of these files, made public on June 5, 2019, has reignited interest in the legend, with amateur investigators worldwide continuing the search. While the FBI's findings debunked this particular evidence, the documents serve as a curious footnote in the ongoing saga of Bigfoot lore. Witness recounts father's experience during Mount St. Helens eruption and ties to Bigfoot lore. The story unfolds through the eyes of a witness whose father held a supervisory role with the Weyerhaeuser Logging Company. On May 18, 1980, the father was engaged in a critical meeting in Kilo, Washington, when the catastrophic eruption of Mount St. Helens erupted, forever altering the region's landscape. Date, May 18, 1980. Location, Mount St. Helens. Land managed by federal government. Nearest town, Kilo, Washington. County, Skamania. State, Washington. This gripping narrative centers on a Bigfoot-related tale interwoven with the dramatic events of the Mount St. Helens eruption. The immediate aftermath was marked by chaos, with emergency crews and logging personnel scrambling. In the days following the eruption, the area was heavily patrolled by security teams tasked with protecting valuable equipment and enforcing restricted zones around the blast site. These patrols, the witness suggests, may have inadvertently stumbled upon something extraordinary, possibly the remains of Bigfoot. The geological upheaval, including intense earthquakes and the rapid melting of the snowcap, reshaped the mountain, raising questions about how such conditions might have affected any potential Bigfoot population. The witness ponders whether the creature, if it existed, could have survived the pyroclastic flows, ash clouds, and subsequent environmental shifts. The disaster might have driven any surviving individuals into hiding or, tragically, to their demise. Cowlitz County, Washington Bigfoot Encounter Report, May 1980. During one of Ray Crow's renowned Western Bigfoot meetings, a fascinating and somewhat unsettling topic emerged among the gathered enthusiasts and researchers. The discussion turned to reports of Sasquatch corpses allegedly discovered in the wake of the catastrophic eruption of Mount St. Helens on May 18, 1980. A witness at the meeting recounted hearing about 2 Sasquatch bodies that the Army Corps of Engineers had reportedly removed from the volcanic devastation zone, an operation believed to have taken place approximately 2 months after the initial blast. Terry Reams, another attendee, shared a related account tied to a dredging operation along the Cowlitz River. He claimed that during this cleanup effort, 2 bodies were unearthed from the sandy riverbed. The discovery sparked immediate action, with a helicopter swiftly arriving to airlift the bodies away from the site. Joe Bielert offered additional context. He specified that the crane used in the Cowlitz River dredging operation belonged to the Manitowoc Company, a detail that could potentially lead to more concrete evidence. The saga took another turn with a separate but potentially related account from 1985. During a helicopter tour of the Mount St. Helens devastation zone, Bobby Short was accompanied by a Vietnam veteran pilot. The pilot recalled witnessing military helicopters transporting nets filled with the charred and semi-charred remains of wildlife, including elk, deer, and bear, as well as something more mysterious. He described seeing hairy, charred arms dangling from the drop nets. These remains were taken to a common pit, where they were incinerated to prevent disease and contamination of the region's rivers. Bigfoot and the Buried A-Frame. Location: Kidd Valley, Washington. Date of event: May 18, 1980, approximately 8.5 hours post-eruption. Roughly 8.5 hours after Mount St. Helens unleashed its devastating volcanic eruption, a relentless river of mud surged into Kidd Valley, located approximately 25 miles from the volcano's epicenter. This destructive flow reached staggering speeds of up to 70 miles per hour during its descent, slowing to 20 miles per hour by the time it ravaged the homes. Among the casualties was a newly constructed A-frame house, entombed under 200 tons of silt, mud, water, and ash. The buried A-frame endures as a central feature of a unique tourist attraction known as the North Fork Survivors Gift Shop. Visitors once had the opportunity to explore the A-frame's ground floor, now situated below the surface. The allure of this site extends beyond the geological marvel, enhanced by an extraordinary addition: the largest Bigfoot statue yet encountered. Standing an impressive 28 feet tall, this concrete behemoth boasts intricately detailed fur and a whimsical, folklorish grin. Families are invited to gather around its massive legs for photographs, adding a playful element to the somber history. The owners of the Survivors Gift Shop sought to commemorate this legend by erecting an original Bigfoot statue in the mid-1980s. That initial version, slightly smaller than the current structure and crafted from combustible materials, met a tragic end when vandals set it ablaze in the mid-1990s, underscoring the statue's vulnerability despite its symbolic resilience. Though the fate of the authentic Bigfoot remains a subject of speculation, the current Bigfoot statue stands as a survivor in its own right. Replaced with a more durable concrete design, it continues to draw visitors. The Enigma of Bigfoot at Mount St. Helens. On May 18, 1980, a date forever etched into the memory of the Pacific Northwest, Mount St. Helens erupted at 8:32 a.m. with the explosive power of 24 megatons of TNT, capable of flattening forests, evaporating lakes, and sculpting a mile-wide crater. The sky darkened as ash fell like a poisonous snowfall. Yet amid the devastation, a lesser-known narrative began to surface. While the world grappled with the volcano's wrath, whispers emerged of a different discovery buried in the debris. Contractors reported seeing soldiers guarding ash-covered bodies that appeared too tall to be human. Medics hinted at treating hulking, bandaged figures in dimly lit tents. Pilots spoke of helicopters lifting cargo nets filled with mysterious contents, ferried to a secluded military base. Tonight, our focus shifts beyond the lava and landslides to a provocative question. Did the U.S. military undertake a secret rescue of Bigfoot? we must journey back through time to a mountain steeped in mystery, where native tribes spoke of mountain devils. Centuries before settlers arrived, the Cowlitz people gathered around campfires, recounting tales of beings they dubbed mountain devils, towering, hairy figures roaming the slopes of Low Wit, now known as Mount St. Helens. These devils stood 9 to 10 feet tall, their coarse hair and glowing eyes cutting through the night. They moved with uncanny silence, leaving only massive footprints in the mud before vanishing at dawn. The tribes revered them as wilderness guardians, cautioning against lingering in high caves after sunset, a warning rooted in lived experience handed down through generations. In July 1924, these oral traditions collided with modernity when 5 gold prospectors set up camp in a remote gorge near Spirit Lake. Fred Beck, Marion Smith, his son Roy, Gabe Lefevre, and John Peterson sheltered in a crude log cabin. One afternoon, Beck and a companion hiked to a spring. As they filled their canteens, rustling broke the silence. Beck turned to face a 7-foot-tall creature, its blackish-brown hair unmistakable, standing 30 yards away. That night, the miners barricaded themselves inside as midnight approached. Suddenly, thud, 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 rocks battered the walls and the roof creaked under a heavy presence. In 2013, researcher Mark Mersell trekked to the site with a metal detector, uncovering .30, 30 Winchester casings matching Beck's described firearms, tangible evidence of the encounter. By the 1970s, sightings escalated. Loggers along the Lewis River documented 18-inch footprints embedded in riverbanks, while hikers reported guttural growls and a musky, rotting meat stench near Spirit Lake. The 1967 Patterson-Gimlin film, capturing a hairy female Sasquatch in a California creek, amplified the phenomenon across the Pacific Northwest, transforming Bigfoot from folklore into a cultural obsession. At 8:32 a.m. on May 18, 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted. Yet, amid the ruin, something unusual emerged. Contractors near the Toutle River described soldiers guarding tarps over massive ash-coated shapes. One worker claiming a glimpse of a hairy, human-like hand protruding, far larger than a bear's. A retired Army pilot described airlifting unmarked cargo nets to Joint Base Lewis McChord, noting their unusual weight. Once a net's corner flapped open, revealing a foot too large with splayed toes like a primate's. A volunteer medic, Karen, recounted treating 3 bandaged figures over 8 feet long in a Coldwater Creek triage tent. She glimpsed a thick-fingered hand with black nails and coarse hair through gauze. A guardsman near Spirit Lake reported tall, hunched figures escorted into a temporary hangar, one blanket slipping to reveal a hairy ash-gray shoulder too broad for a human. A retired airman recalled securing a hangar at Lewis McChord for 2 non-human entities over 8 feet tall, their backward-bending knees and heavy coats marking them as otherworldly. In 2004, a FOIA request for recovery logs yielded no records responsive to your request, despite details of helicopter deployments to unmarked LZs in the blast zone. Consider survival. Bigfoot, described as nocturnal and cave-dwelling, may have sheltered in lava tubes during the blast, emerging burned and exposed as forests vanished. Why intervene? The 1973 Endangered Species Act might compel protection. Cold War fears could drive study or weaponization of a new hominid. Public panic threatened stability, justifying secrecy. Eyewitnesses had no gain, only loss. Their accounts, backed by Mersell's 2013 casings and recent Toutle River growls, defied dismissal. The mountain's legacy persists, its restricted valleys and denied requests hinting at a living mystery. As you stand in a shadowed forest, will you shrug off the chill? Or recall Ape Canyon, the medics, the whispers of Lewis McChord? Is this a tale or a truth watching from the mist? As the mist settles over Mount St. Helens once more, the enigma of Bigfoot lingers, a mystery woven into the ash and legends of the past. Whether guardian of the wild or a tale lost to time, the story invites us to keep listening, keep searching.